Well, hello there everybody. So many people say that story is king and that even though you have the best equipment and the best skill, you still can't make a good film without story. Well, there's more to it than that. But first, intro. So you might have seen the title of this video and might be a little confused. Okay, let me explain. Yes, story is king, but by now that is a bell that has been rung so much that people are starting to get deaf to the sound. So I'm only going to scratch the surface of story. But first let me clarify. Previously another filmmaker and I had a conversation about story versus gear. Which one's better? I said that the less that they notice our work, the more successful we as filmmakers have been at our job. It's not all about drawing attention to the storyteller, it's about telling the story. And the filmmaker replied and a great conversation started. However, I think we misunderstood each other just a little bit. I beat the nail pretty hard about the significance of story, and I kind of overlooked or neglected the weight of gear, whereas the other filmmaker kind of hit pretty hard on the importance of expensive equipment. I couldn't really argue with him though, because gear is important. However, I do think that we were both on the extreme sides of the scale. Yes, gear does give you the ability to shoot amazing stuff, but you need to justify what you shoot and why you shoot it. Let me explain what I mean. Having good gear is great. In fact, it's important. However, that does not diminish the importance of story. Don't worry, I'm not going to get into that deeply because people are tired of hearing it. But the real reason why you're watching this video is because you want to improve your filmmaking skills, regardless of what ideas you need to know or how to film it with your equipment. How do I do that? Well, start by marrying good storytelling with good equipment. Yes, I get it. Equipment is expensive. I know what it's like when I wanted that Sony a7S II and I just couldn't afford it. But that does beg the question, which is better, story or gear? Which should I sacrifice? Usually equipment is sacrificed because story is much cheaper and obviously equipment can get expensive. Well, you're actually asking the wrong question. In fact, try this. So now I'm always going to focus on the story side of film. I'm going to focus on how to bring the camera moves to life. I'm also going to take note of the dialogue and whether it feels real or not, as well as to adjust the talent's position to help allude to a truth. But at the same time, I'm going to go and make wise choices on what gear I'd buy. I'm going to make sure I acquire that gear in order to achieve the specific goals. Now, if I can't afford it, I'm going to rent it. And if I can't rent it, I'm going to figure out some DIY way to get the same result. Now, I would highly encourage you not to go the DIY route because I know how hard it is. Because usually when you have a DIY slider or dolly or something like that, you're going to be sacrificing something. It could be efficiency, time management, safety, or your sanity. Yeah, I know what it's like when you go crazy over a piece of equipment on set when it breaks. It's not fun. But if it's really your only option, then by all means, go ahead and do it. But here's something very important that you need to remember in all of this. Do not let your gear define you. Don't let it limit you. If you don't have the slider, but you need that shot, figure something out. Try put it on a wheelchair or a carpet. Play around. And I know you know this, but 95% of people don't really care about what jolt was in the camera. What sticks out more to them as a viewer when they visit the cinema? What is the question or the thing that they're saying 95% of the time after they've watched the film? It's not, wow, that was shot on the red epic, I just know it. No, they're usually like, man, the story just was weaker the further the movie progressed. Or, good gracious, I wish they had added a little more conflict, that was a little slow. Here, let's try my award-winning short film as an example. Now, I know it's not the best film, but considering of how many lives it's touched, I would say it was a pretty big success. I had a Phantom 1, which was the first DJI drone that they released, and I put a GoPro on it as well. I also used the DJI Ronin M, the Canon T3i, and two small lamps that didn't really give me any good lighting. And that was one of the things I would have changed about it, and I also would have fixed a couple holes in the story. However, I did okay on the story and principal photography, but I did not take into account the importance of my gear. Keep in mind that I did have 2.5 weeks to shoot, write, edit, score, and put together this whole film. And it definitely wouldn't have been possible without New Vine Media's help with the music. I won first place in the CNY Festival of Shorts, but I knew that I could do better. And that's the important thing about filmmaking, is that after each film, you can learn something which you can apply to the next one. So here's this episode's quick tip. Doing short films can sometimes be better than doing feature films. Generally, you're doing more films at a time, you encounter more problems, different problems, and usually you can solve those problems and therefore you can apply those to the next films. The more you do, usually the more you can learn. And assuming that's your goal, that's probably a good way to go. So with all that in mind, I want to focus first on story and at the same time be very aware of what gear I use and the best way to achieve those goals with my equipment. Film gear is sometimes, in fact, it's too often downplayed and deemed to be unnecessary. There is a point to where you just have to consider your equipment. And yes, better equipment will give you the ability to make good films. It doesn't make good films. So with all this in mind, I'm going to leave you with this experiment. Go to the cinema with a couple of your friends, say 2 filmmakers and 2 friends that aren't really interested in filmmaking like you are. After the film, ask them what did they think. Don't ask them what they thought about the lighting or the camera setups. Just say, what do you think? You might be surprised. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing. And remember, learn, film, repeat. And until next time, keep smiling, keep shooting.